What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the FansToys grinder with the Gigapower Superator, both versions of a masterpiece Grimlock. So as always with these comparisons, this is my opinion. I'm trying to give people who are looking to buy these, one or the other, or maybe even both, a comparison so they can decide for themselves which one they like better. However, if the one that I pick or the one that gets the higher score isn't the one that you like, then you win and you get the one that you like. But this is really to help those to decide, what direction they want to go. Obviously, these are both older figures, so they are a little bit harder to get a hold of at this point. But you can still find them. You just have to pay a little bit higher prices. So with that being said, let's get started, and we will start with accessories. So here we have all the accessories, and normally I don't bother with instructions or collector's card, but there's a difference here. So the FansToys does come with a collector's card. It also has a pretty nice instruction manual, whereas the Gigapower does not come with collector's cards. It does come with an instruction manual, but it's pretty poor. One of the worst I've seen. It's just missing steps and stuff like that. So we're not going to count those accessories, but I do want to note that the FansToys does come with a collector's card, which is pretty nice. Other than that, here's what you get in the box. They both come with a sword. Obviously, the Gigapower is much bigger and colored slightly differently, but they both have one of those. They both have the gun, again, size, same thing. The Gigapower tends to be a little bit more toy-based, right, the coloring, but they both have that. The FansToys one appears to light up. I don't see a light-up mechanism on the Gigapower, so that's a little difference there. They both come with a crown. The FansToys is this die cast, whereas the Gigapower is this plastic version. Also, this is very sharp on the Gigapower, but they both have that. And then finally, they both have the alternate head with the red eyes. Just obviously, once again, the Gigapower a little bit bigger. But what you're left with is this alternate head and, or I guess, maybe eyepiece and alternate red eyes for the dyno mode, where you don't get that with the Gigapower. So we're going to give accessories to FansToys. We're going to talk about the sculpt, and again, once a very subjective part of the review, but we're going to put the G1 cartoon in the middle there so you can compare. Both of them hit the cartoon design cues very closely. They both have all these translucent pieces here for the legs. They both have the iconic golden chest. They both have the red crotch and waist area and abdomen area. They both have the claws on the arms. Very consistent all the way through. There are some differences in the coloring, and we'll talk more about that when we get to paint, but just design-wise, very, very, very similar in terms of the sculpt. What I do see different is some of the extra sculpt that Gigapower has put in. So you can see there's just a lot more just little details, and those don't come through in the cartoon. There isn't all this extra molded and sculpted detail. And just leaving out the paint for a second, just going on sculpt and just going on the molding, there's a lot more to look at on the Gigapower, especially back here on the wings, on the legs, on the side of the arms, on the front of the chest. A little more detail. So in addition to that, I do see that the waist on the Gigapower is a little more consistent in terms of the proportions compared to FansToys. You got a very tiny waist and midsection, whereas here it kind of is a little bit more even. So I'm going to give sculpt to Gigapower. I just think they did a lot more, put a lot more effort into the sculpt when it came to this character. Next, we're going to talk about the paint, and paint is pretty much a no-brainer here. We don't even need to waste time. Gigapower nails and crushes FansToys when it comes to paint. Next, we're going to talk about the build, and one of the only ways to really understand the build quality is to actually transform it. So I have transformed both of these, and there are some things on the Gigapower that do kind of have me a little concerned. Down here in the feet especially, there's some areas that just don't feel so great. These pegs right here, they seem like they're a little bit on the weak side. I'm not sure if they would last. They plug into the back. The other thing that's a little bit concerning are these hip skirts here. They're on a very, very thin peg that goes into the waist, and so you just got to be careful. It hasn't broken, but I am being very careful. There's a tiny, tiny little peg there. And then some of the way this transforms, there's some pieces that don't feel so great. There's some parts that they did really well, like the sliding mechanism and joints. But then there's other parts that don't feel great. Right here is another example. The way you transform the hands, you got to open this panel. But if you push this past, it will snap. And so you got to push this into the right position. And it's got to be just right before you can open it. Otherwise, you'll snap that thing, and it just doesn't feel like it's built well there or designed well. So we're going to give build to FansToys. Next, we're going to talk about articulation, but in order to do this, we have to actually show you the articulation. So we're going to go pretty quickly through all the articulation. So the head is on a ball joint. It goes up to there, down to there, not a lot of up and down, and it rotates all the way around, and you can get the side-to-side look. The arms rotate all the way around. You go on a ratchet out and a ratchet all the way around. You have a rotation at the bicep, double jointed elbow. If you wanted to get more, you could pull this down and then get more of elbow rotation if you needed it. Mostly that's for dyno mode, but you can utilize it in the robot mode. You can rotate the wrist and you get the typical FansToys hand. Each finger is articulated at 2 points, and then the thumb is on a ball joint. And also has a base pin. Rotation at the waist all the way around. No ab crunch on either of these guys. The leg goes up to there on a ratchet. Back to there, hindered by its own waist. So really not a lot there. Kind of strange that they limited that there. And then out to the side on a friction joint, which hold is pretty good. Rotation at the thigh, rotation at the knee. Single jointed knee gets you 90 degrees. And then you get a nice ankle tilt all the way down to there. And a toe tilt as well. Or sorry, not a toe tilt, ankle tilt. Forward, not a lot of back, but plenty of forward there. Right, now, oh, and you can also articulate these wings. So they go up and down a little bit, and then they go in and out as far as you kind of need them to go. Moving on to the Gigapower. The head is also on a ball joint. You get a little bit more movement with the head, a little bit more down, a little bit more up. Hopefully that wasn't off camera. You get a rotation on a ratchet all the way around, and also up this way, just like the FansToys. You get a rotation at the bicep. I think it's a ratchet. Yep. You do get a double jointed elbow, but it only goes up to here. So you don't get, even though it has the double joint and it's ratcheted, it doesn't go very far. You get the rotation at the wrist, and same kind of hands as FansToys. 2 pins on each finger, and then a ball jointed thumb. And these are actually pretty nice hands. I was surprised that I really liked them. Continuing on, you have a rotation at the waist. You have hip skirts on all 3 sides. It goes up to here on a ratchet, all the way back to there. So a little bit more articulation on this leg going backwards. I don't know if you need it, but you get it. And then out to the side on a ratchet. So again, you get another extra ratchet there out to the side. And for a heavy figure like this, you need it. You definitely need it. Okay, so you see, this is now, I talked about this earlier, these don't feel good when you move them. Rotation at the thigh, just like FansToys. 90-degree bend at the knee, and no ankle tilt or articulation whatsoever. It goes out this way, but that's the wrong direction. That's not the direction you need. You need it to go this way, because when you push the legs out, you end up with this gap, and you can't get the feet flat on the floor. That is a fatal flaw in Gigapower's articulation. Even though they've got the additional ratchets for the thighs, I'm going to give articulation to FansToys, because not having this ankle tilt is a severe blow. It just really prevents you from, getting that one, pretty necessary piece of articulation. So I'm going to give it to FansToys just because that's a fatal flaw for me. So we're going to talk about the transformation and engineering. So as far as transformation, they're both very similar I mean, how much different can Grimlock transform, right? It's that very classic. I mean, they both transform, even very similar to the Takara Tomy version. So I'm going to give them a tie on transformation because they're very, very similar in terms of how they go. But for engineering, I think FansToys did a fantastic job in figuring out how to get a cover for these inside of the feet. This kind of stuff is a little bit ugly. And a lot of the Dinobots, whatever brand, it doesn't matter, FansToys, Gigapower, whoever, they tend to have all this inner stuff showing because it's just hard to engineer it that way. But they were able to figure out a way, and it covers up really good, and it looks very similar to the cartoon because it was a clean look in the cartoon. So I'm going to give it to FansToys just because they were able to come up with a nice, clean transformation for these legs, and it looks good. But in terms of transformation, we'll get a tie. All right, here we have them both in their Dyno modes. And I don't know, Grimlock always is fun when he's in Dyno mode. But let's go over articulation because they both have similar articulation. So FansToys can move the tail back and forth, up and down. That's pretty much it for the tail. You can rotate, and that's one of the problems with the FansToys. Similar to this, but the Gigapower is actually worse in terms of the arms falling off. But you have this joint here, and then you have the hand, and then each finger articulates individually, so you can get the claws out like that. The head rotates up to there, down to there. The jaw can open that much, and then you've got the cannon in the middle there. And then the legs rotate all the way around just like they did when they were hands. You have a double joint here, here, and here, so you can get some movement there. And then you have the toes that articulate. I do find that the ankle joint is a little bit loose. I've tried tightening that screw, so that is a little bit of an irritation there. On the Gigapower, you have the same rotating tail. It doesn't go up and down, it just goes back and forth like this. You have the same ball jointed arm here, and then you have a bend here, but for whatever reason this one just comes right off. And that's what I was talking about with the arms. And then this hand should move, but it comes right off as soon as I articulate it. These are very sharp and very die cast, so just be careful with those. They both have kind of the same issue with the ankles. They're a little bit weak, but the Gigapower is just a hair stronger in terms of this ankle joint. So it tends to hold a little bit better in the Dyno mode. But when you look at the Dyno modes, this is where the paint really, really shines. And, this is just something to really look at. It looks beautiful. There's no other way to say it. The Grimlock version, and also the head. The head on the Gigapower just nails the G1 cartoon a lot better. Speaking of, we put the G1 cartoon there. Hopefully I had it there already. But the original FansToys head that you got, it was a little bit off, a little bit wide in terms of the actual sculpt of the head. Whereas the Gigapower, it's got that more narrow, it just looks more like the cartoon. They did give us a replacement head, but it did not come with this figure. To buy it separately, I think it was like $20 or $30. I didn't buy that, but that does give you the more G1 accurate head. But because it doesn't come with this figure, I'm not going to count that here. So I'm going to give the Dyno mode, the alt mode, to Gigapower. I just really think they nailed this Dyno mode. It looks great. The final factor is the cost. So at MSRP retail, the Gigapower comes in at $230. The FansToys comes in at $200. Now the prices have gone up and down on the aftermarket, but I'm talking original retail price. So we're going to give cost to FansToys. And final thoughts wise, you can see the score there. FansToys wins it here, but that's not the whole story. So you really have to decide kind of what do you want in your Grimlock. If you prefer to have a more accurate or more detailed and painted Dyno mode, Gigapower is the one for you. It's got way more paint, way more details, way more sculpted detail, and it just you can see that it comes through in the figure, and you paid for it, or you paid that little extra money. If that's not a factor for you, if you don't care about all those extra details, and if you want it to look more tuned, which I think this does look a little bit more tuned just because it matches, especially with the legs. By the way, I forgot to mention this. The FansToys has a little piece here just for completeness. You can put that down. And that is something for me personally, the fact that it has ankle tilt and the Superator doesn't, it makes it a little bit less stable in the robot mode because you've got the heels and the feet not flat on the ground. For me, that's kind of a big thing. You know, that's sort of a deal breaker, not having ankle tilt. It just feels like for a character this big, you need it so that it doesn't fall down. But it really depends what you want. So really up to you, you know, what your preferences are. Me personally, I'm going to stick with the FansToys, but both good versions of Grimlock. That's really it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.